7:37 morning, this is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Yes, and on a lighter note...
We need it this morning.
Yeah, and we need it this morning, you're right. Have we seen the front page of the Mirror this morning? It features BBC legend Jan Leeming, who's 81, fighting ageism by asking why shouldn't older women wear swimsuits? Do we agree?
Ah.
She looks great, doesn't she?
Well, interesting, because she was on the Eurovision thing, wasn't she? With Graham the other week. I didn't realise she was 81.
Doesn't she look amazing?
Oh, good on you, Jan.
Good for her. And yes, I do think you could wear swimsuits at that age. I think she looks great.
Why not? And she's being sensible. It's not a bikini.
Oh, you wouldn't like that, would you? You'd have to draw the line at a bikini.
I sort of think, yeah, bikinis. I thought, well, bikinis is a young woman's game, I would say. No, you may disagree.
Well, I think she looks wonderful.
She does look wonderful. Good on you, Jan.
Could be a trend.
Ms. Leeming. Sticking with the Mirror, the paper has also a lovely spread of Tina Turner in the arms of her friend David Bowie.
Oh, that's a lovely photo, isn't it? The Times have gone down a different route with their front page this morning. There's a really interesting article there about foreign teachers being offered £10,000 to come and work in England. It's reportedly to fill subject gaps in maths and science. What do you make of that? Do you think it's a good idea? Let us know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit torn on that one. Let's talk to writer and journalist Emma Wolfe and co-founder of the Together Association, Alan Miller. Morning, you two. Let's kick off with the Express. Alan, and a bit more travel chaos.
Yeah, not again, BA. Travel chaos ruins holidays. This is Groundhog Day, is it? We've got a situation where tech issues have impacted many of the flights at Heathrow and across Europe internationally. And one of the most frustrating things, aside from it being really frustrating and costly and a nightmare for people to have their holidays ruined, the long weekends when they've planned them so much in advance, is that then when they try to get any kind of resolution, there's 75 to 100 metre queues with only one or two people helping them, and people being told when they finally get to speak to someone, go to the website. It's really, really problematic, and I think it reflects an issue. On the one hand, everyone's talking about AI and how it's going to take over the world, but at the same time, we've got issues not just with tech, but with logistics. We've got questions about broken Britain. It's not just the public sector. We know that the airports were closed for a long time, the retention in staff, efficiency in logistics. We need to get a grip with this situation.
Yeah, we do. It never seems to get any better, does it? This is the problem.
And it's not as though they don't know that the half-term is coming up or the summer holidays are coming up. There should have been at least more staff available to help people with this. OK, tech issues happen, but when you know that you're reaching a really, really high season, you kind of need to prepare. And the BA website, amongst many others, is notoriously kind of frustrating to try and use or to book through or to contact anyone through. So I think BA are facing some pretty big questions here.
Certainly are. Emma, let's go to the iWeekend, shall we? And austerity on trial is their headline.
So finally, the public inquiry into COVID is set to start next month. And one of the key witnesses who's going to be called is the former Chancellor George Osborne, amongst others, including the former Prime Minister David Cameron and also the former Health Secretary, now Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. And this is the first module, which is of the inquiry, which I imagine is going to go on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
The first module is going to cover 2010 to 2020, and it's going to look at the UK's resilience, the planning, the preparedness for a pandemic, basically. I just wonder about these inquiries, whether it's going to spend a lot of time going back, looking at austerity, looking at the NHS budget, whether the NHS just wasn't ready for a pandemic on this scale. Well, I wouldn't actually call it a pandemic on this scale, but anyway, whether they were not ready for this kind of health emergency, and then not really get to the questions which I think lots of us do want answered, the kind of lockdown file stuff about lockdown and about the necessity of those strict restrictions and about the severity of COVID or not. I just wonder if they're going to get caught up in things like austerity from 10 years ago. I want to talk about how they actually dealt with COVID.
Is there a relevance to this?
I think that it really reflects a one-sidedness and an approach of the COVID inquiry that we have to be very, very critical and wary of. The idea that their evaluation and assessment is going to be predicated on capacity capacity going back over a decade, when in reality we saw that decisions were made around a whole set of criteria, lockdown being one key one, unprecedented, nothing to do with that, a COVID-only NHS. When we did open places potentially for more capacity, they weren't used at all. These are decisions based on very particular questions and an approach that jettisoned, that threw away our pandemic preparedness strategy. And I'm not sure that the COVID inquiry as it stands is fit for purpose currently.
No, I wonder what the benefit of it is at all, to be honest, considering how long it's going to take and how much it is going to cost, which will be tens and tens and tens of millions of pounds.
When you go back, and we know, look, we've had the debates a million times about austerity in the NHS and whether the NHS is or isn't, needs more funding, but in terms of a COVID inquiry, I think Alan's exactly right. We need to look at those key questions. Was it a hysterical overreaction? Did we force people into lockdown? Did we end up having, being overwhelmed because of other decisions? And what about those Nightingale hospitals that were built for this wave of sick people that were not used? What about those questions?
Yeah, fair point.
Alan, you've got a related story in the Daily Mail, haven't you? Global health chiefs were yesterday told to forget drawing up pandemic powers that could force Britain into another lockdown.
That's right. So this is a very important story that looks at the role of the World Health Organization that up until a few years ago had much more member state influence, and then we've seen far less of that and much more domination by one or two nations and some big financial organizations. And what's happened is very positive, which is that Esther McVeigh and a number of other MPs, including Sir Christopher Chope, David Davis and others, have challenged the question that, about our own sovereignty in the UK, about the decision-making of our own government and MPs to be able to set criteria, not have a declaration by the World Health Organization, either in terms of amendments or a new treaty, that once it's enshrined could do all sorts of things like push lockdowns immediately, have vaccine passports, many of the things that people contested in the UK. But whatever anyone thinks about it, this is a decision like Brexit, which is about sovereignty, where people, elected representatives in the UK need to decide. So it's really a positive thing that this is getting airtime now, it's getting attention. It's also the case that it won't be ratified till May, and everyone in the UK has an opportunity to speak to their MPs, to write to the government, to let them know what they think about this, because in the end, having just talked about the COVID inquiry and having seen the lockdown files and the Twitter files, we know that all sorts of things happened, from people being deplatformed, other scientific views not being allowed to be seen and heard, the opposite of science. And so this is an opportunity for us to say, look, we want to have our own elected representatives make decisions, because when an organisation makes a declaration or says things, either legally forcing other nation states to do something or even just having it out there, it has an influence. So this is a really crucial story.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know if... I guess you two would both agree on this one. I get the impression. I wonder if we were talking about a global situation, isn't there an argument to say there should be a global response?
Yes, but I still want to have a say in that. I think people feel that they want to have a say in that, and in this situation, we don't.
Yeah, no.
And that is about sovereignty, exactly.
Let's bring it closer to home, for the time being at least, in the Express. Sainsbury's, the boss of Sainsbury's, says they're not guilty of greedflation.
So the boss of Sainsbury's is saying, actually, the grocers are not using the runaway inflation to boost their profits. He said, we made less profits year on year. I think for many people that are watching food prices literally doubling on really basic items, not luxuries, not caviar, not champagne, but on bread and cheese and milk and, real staples, fruit and vegetables, things like that. They are really valid questions about the supermarkets and sort of, are they using this global, economic crisis, the situation in Ukraine that we keep being told about? Are they using this as an excuse to push up prices? And when inflation falls, Stephen, are prices ever going to come down again?
Well, no, because inflation...
Because we keep hearing it's going to be well below 10%.
Yeah,
should be around 2%.
Yeah, but inflation in that would require deflation.
Well,
not just reduced inflation.
Why can't prices come back to how they were before if inflation goes back? People have got used to paying, £2 for a loaf of bread.
That's not how it works, is it?
Not how it works.
Because if when inflation comes down, it just means that the prices, as they are, will grow less quickly.
Well, I think it's outrageous. And
Well,
I think this is what we were talking about earlier with the recession and things like that. Is it a technical recession or not? It's sort of irrelevant to people on the street, to actual people living their lives, because what they're paying for every day is food and fuel and mortgage costs and, you know, rent costs and things like that.
That's certainly how you're feeling, isn't it? That's where, you know, it's hitting the pound in your pocket, just doing the weekly food shop.
Absolutely. And what we need to do is we need to create a situation where people have more money in their pocket, they have better wages. That means an ambitious, let's have a plan. Let's have a plan for house building, for investment in research and development. Let's expand our capacity in terms of energy and energy investment, not have limits, not have restrictions in terms of, you know, we've gone too far. There's this whole attitude that we've got, it seems to dominate both main parties, that actually the solutions to things is to have restrictions and limits, technocratic managerialism. Actually, why don't we have a World's Fair Festival of Britain approach where we can really have a dynamic wealth creation for everyone? It's not a dichotomy between companies, profits and staff. Everyone makes more money. We could build millions of new houses. We can have a situation the coastal regions are developed, universities, biotech, a whole range of areas, retraining. That takes commitment, that takes principle, and that would end up transforming our relationship, and in agriculture as well, which is what's needed.
And when Rishi Sunak had his Farm to Fork summit at 10 Downing Street, he just messed around and did selfies with the Clarkson's Farm TV team. He didn't actually address the issue of agriculture, farming, food prices, all of that, the really key issues.
Yeah. Oh well. It's still. I mean, I just wonder if it's a bit of a utopia, isn't it? To say, well, we need to just do something where everyone's earning more money, and I mean, yeah, great.
Well, people should be able to afford to feed themselves. That's not a utopia.
Well,
That's the reality for people.
No, that is a reality, absolutely. But when you just say, well, people need to earn better wages. Well, it's easily said. How on earth do you do it?
Well, it's a very good question, but that was a dominant factor of both left and right and the centre for decades. Whether you're a Keynesian or you're into Hayek, the whole principle was about wealth creation. How it was distributed was often a discussion. It's a symptom of our low horizons today that we think we have to put up with this situation. You know, in the 70s in America and Ford, they were on $20, $25 an hour, right? People could have 2 cars, they could have a swimming pool. These are what they call blue collar, what we call working class people, right? The whole idea that we can create something is much to do with our own outlook on things.
Oh well, we shall see. Emma, Alan, good to see you both. We'll catch up with you next hour.
Thank you very much.